I'm not supposed to tell you what happens on Clinton Road after midnight, but silence has a way of killing you faster than the shadows do. Every cop in New Jersey knows the stories, but most laugh them off until they draw the short straw and get the night patrol through West Milford, down that cursed stretch of asphalt where the woods press too close and the road seems to wind longer than it should. I'll tell you this much. There are rules so strange and strict that if you break even one, you'll wish a normal criminal was the thing waiting for you out there. Pause. Last week, I saw headlights appear in my rearview mirror though I was the only car on the road for miles. They weren't headlights, not really. They glowed red, like something alive was chasing me, and when I blinked, they were gone. Slow, tense tone, that was before the voice came through my radio. The voice that wasn't dispatch. The voice that called me by my name. If you think you're brave enough to hear the rest, keep listening. But don't say I didn't warn you. My name's Officer Daniel Mercer, New Jersey Highway Patrol, and for the past 8 years I've worn the badge, carried the gun, and told myself that no amount of superstition, local lore, or late-night ghost stories could ever shake the foundation of logic and law I was trained to follow. But Clinton Road doesn't care about law. Clinton Road laughs at procedure. The first time they assigned me that route, I remember walking into the locker room and hearing 2 older officers muttering about the rookie drawing the short stick. I laughed it off, assuming it was hazing, the way cops love to mess with new blood. Only later did I realize the way they looked at me wasn't teasing, it was pity. Clinton Road is 20 miles of hell wrapped in asphalt, hemmed in by trees that seem older than the state itself, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. You'd think, working nights, I'd be used to dark stretches of highway, but Clinton Road, it's different. The first time I turned onto it, I noticed. The air grew colder by at least 10 degrees, like I'd rolled the cruiser into an icebox. My headlights only seemed to push the dark back a few feet, and the trees on either side crowded in, tall and skeletal, their branches clawing together overhead as if trying to blot out the sky. Dispatch always says the same thing when you call. In your location there, copy that, Mercer, Clinton Road logged. But their voices get clipped, hurried, almost relieved when you hang up. That road has a reputation. Bodies dumped by the mob back in the day. Phantom cars that appear in your rearview then vanish. A boy who drowned near the bridge and supposedly waits for anyone who dares toss a coin in the water, daring them to join him in the dark below. I never cared about urban legends. Not really. But the longer you drive that road, the more you feel the weight of every rumor. It was my 3rd week on patrol when I really started noticing things, small at first. A dead deer in the exact same spot 3 nights in a row, but with no sign of scavengers touching it. The smell of sulfur when the windows were up and the vents closed. Static across the radio whenever I crossed Dead Man's Curve, so bad the speakers would pop like gunfire. That was unsettling, sure, but I brushed it off. Until the night I saw the girl. I was rolling slow, maybe 25, near mile marker 10, when I saw her, long black hair, white dress that almost glowed in my high beams, standing just off the shoulder like she'd been waiting for me. She didn't wave, didn't step out, just stood there with her head tilted slightly, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I told myself, it's a runaway, a hiker, some drunk kid messing around. So I stopped the cruiser, put my hand on the door handle, and looked again. She was gone. Not walked away, not hidden in the trees. Just gone, like the night swallowed her whole. The temperature in the cruiser dropped so fast my breath fogged the windshield. I radioed dispatch, tried to sound calm, said I thought I saw a pedestrian on the road. Static answered me, thick and crushing, like 1,000 voices whispering. Just below the surface. I shut the mic off and kept driving. After that, things escalated. I'd hear tapping on the glass when I stopped at the pull-offs, like fingertips drumming lightly against the driver's side window. I'd catch shadows in the treeline pacing the cruiser, keeping stride no matter how fast or slow I went. Once, near the reservoir, I swore I saw headlights cresting the hill behind me, but they were blood red, not white, and they never seemed to get closer or farther, just hovering in the mirror until I blinked and they were gone. I tried to tell myself it was fatigue, imagination, tricks of light on a lonely road at 2 a.m., but the fear in my gut told me otherwise. The real breaking point came 2 months ago. I'd pulled over near the bridge to stretch my legs, just for a moment, when I heard it, a coin hitting water. That sharp, ringing plunk of metal sinking. My blood went cold. I hadn't moved, hadn't tossed anything. The legend slammed into my brain. The boy, waiting under the surface, daring you to play his game. I turned, flashlight sweeping, but there was no one on the bridge. Just me, the cold water below, and ripples spreading out from the exact center. Like something had stirred beneath. I got back in the cruiser and floored it, but not before I heard a voice, faint, wet, bubbling, whisper my name from the water. That was when the rules came into play. At first, they were just warnings muttered by the older guys. Don't stop at the bridge after midnight. Don't answer if the radio calls you by name. If you see headlights that aren't white, don't let them catch you. But the longer I worked Clinton Road, the more I realized these weren't superstitions. They were survival tactics. I started writing them down, little by little, taping them to the dash like a lifeline. And yet, even with the rules, things kept getting stranger. Sometimes the road itself felt longer than it should, the odometer spinning miles that didn't exist. Sometimes I'd see the same landmarks repeating, the same billboard, the same busted guardrail, over and over, until I questioned if I was driving in circles. My fellow officers avoided talking about it, but one night in the diner after shift, Sergeant Holloway looked me dead in the eye and said, "You follow the rules, or you end up like Collins." I asked who Collins was. No one answered. They just went quiet, all at once, forks clinking against plates as the air grew heavy. I didn't push, but that name stuck in my head. Collins. I started digging through old files, found half-finished reports, patrol logs that ended mid-sentence. Collins was real, all right, a patrolman assigned to Clinton Road 15 years ago. He went missing on duty. His cruiser was found abandoned near the reservoir, engine still running, radio hissing static. No trace of him. Not a body, not a footprint, nothing. Just gone. And here's the thing. The last line of his logbook read, "Red lights behind me again. If they get closer this time, It ended there. No continuation, no conclusion. Just a dash. I think about that sometimes, when I'm alone on Clinton Road, watching the mirror, waiting for the red glow to come back. I think about Collins, and I wonder if he broke a rule. I wonder if he heard his name on the radio and answered. I wonder if he threw a coin without meaning to. And I wonder if one night, I'll make the same mistake. The strange thing is, part of me feels like I already have. Because lately, I've started hearing my own voice on the radio. My own voice, whispering things I haven't said yet. Warnings I don't remember giving. Pleas I haven't spoken. Sometimes it's me begging myself to get off the road. Sometimes it's me screaming. And sometimes it's me laughing. Pause. I'm telling you all this now because I don't think I can keep it bottled much longer. I think the road knows me the way it knew Collins. And the rules, they're not just rules anymore. They're chains holding me to this cursed strip of asphalt, one shift at a time. And if you ever find yourself driving Clinton Road after midnight, alone, with nothing but the trees pressing in and the dark pressing harder, remember this. It's not the criminals you should fear out there. It's the road itself. And the road always collects. The second month I spent on Clinton Road bled into the third, and it was during that stretch of endless nights that the incidents began to escalate in ways I couldn't brush off as fatigue or coincidence, things I could no longer explain away. With the comfort of logic and procedure, and the more time I spent on that damned road, the more I felt like the asphalt beneath my tires was learning me, memorizing the sound of my cruiser, tasting the vibrations of my heartbeat until it could anticipate my every move. The silence out there is never just silence. It's a waiting silence, a pregnant hush like the air before a lightning strike, as though the woods themselves were holding their breath for me to pass by. And some nights I swore if I rolled down the window I'd hear faint breaths, dozens of them, in unison with mine. One night, around 2:17 a.m., I came around Dead Man's Curve slower than usual because the fog had pooled thick as milk, and as my headlights cut through it, I saw taillights, glowing faintly ahead. Relief hit me for a second. Another car meant company, maybe just some kid out too late, maybe a drunk, maybe even another officer. But the longer I followed, the more wrong it felt. The taillights never grew closer, no matter how much I pressed. The gas, they just hovered at the same distance, sometimes flickering like candles in the fog. I radioed dispatch, tried to log a possible vehicle, but the moment I said, I have visual on. The radio shrieked with such sharp static that it made my fillings buzz, and through it I heard something. It wasn't dispatch. It was a low voice, almost amused, saying, "Closer, Mercer. Come closer." I dropped the mic like it burned me and floored it, speedometer screaming past 80, 90, but the lights never drew closer, until suddenly they just blinked out, like someone had flipped a switch. The fog cleared in an instant, and the road ahead was empty. Just asphalt stretching endlessly, my headlights painting the void. That was the first time I realized something out there wanted me to follow. Another night, I stopped near the reservoir, because I thought I saw someone standing at the edge, looking into the water. I approached on foot, flashlight cutting through the dark, my hand on my holster in case it was some drunk about to jump. But when I got within 20 feet, I realized the figure wasn't moving at all. It was standing unnaturally still, and its outline was hazy, indistinct, like smoke pretending to be a person. I called out, standard procedure, you give a warning, but my voice felt swallowed by the night, dampened, like the trees were drinking the sound. The figure didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, but I swear, Mercer, I swear it tilted its head just slightly when I stepped closer, in the same exact way that girl by the roadside had tilted hers. And then it was gone. Not gone like slipping away into the dark. Gone like it had never been there at all. No splash in the water, no footprints in the dirt, just my own shallow breathing echoing back at me. That night when I got back in the cruiser, my rearview mirror showed me something impossible, my own reflection, except it wasn't me. My reflection's mouth was moving, whispering something, even though I wasn't. I leaned forward, trying to read the lips, and for a second, I thought it was saying leave. But then I realized it wasn't a warning, it was a laugh. My reflection was laughing. I punched the mirror so hard it spiderwebbed cracks across the glass, and for a second, in those shards, I saw multiple versions of me, all of them laughing, all of them leaning too close. I drove without looking at that mirror the rest of the night, and the next morning, I had the department replace it, and then there was the hitchhiker. Every cop on Clinton Road has heard of him, though no one talks about it directly. Like naming him makes him more real. They say he appears around mile marker 16, thumb out, face hidden in the shadow of his hood. If you pick him up, he vanishes from the back seat before you reach the end of the road. If you don't pick him up, well, there are stories of cars found upside down in ditches, engines cold, windshields cracked from the inside. I told myself I'd never stop. I told myself I'd never even slow down. But that night, maybe my curiosity got the better of me, or maybe the road wanted me to, because before I realized it, I was rolling to a stop, the cruiser idling as the figure stepped closer, the hood pulled low, obscuring his face. My pulse thudded like a drumline in my ears. He didn't speak, didn't move except to extend one hand toward the door handle. My instincts screamed at me to hit the gas, but my hand, my goddamn hand, was already reaching to unlock the door, as though it wasn't my own. I had to bite my lip hard enough to draw blood just to stop myself. The taste of iron grounded me, and I floored it, tires screeching, the cruiser fishtailing as I sped off. In the rear view, I saw him standing there, arms still outstretched, and for one heart-stopping second, I thought I saw a face beneath the hood. Not a stranger's. Mine. My own face. Pale and expressionless, staring after me. I nearly crashed pulling over to breathe, to try and make sense of it. But the longer I sat there with the engine idling, the more wrong it felt, like stopping at all was an invitation. I swear the woods pressed closer, the branches reaching over the roof as though to snatch me. I drove until I was out of breath, until the trees finally broke and civilization reappeared. After that, I started keeping notes in a small black notebook I carried in my breast pocket. At first it was just times and places, little details, fog. Thicker than usual at Dead Man's Curve, radio static at the reservoir, hitchhikers spotted near 16. But the entries got stranger. Saw my reflection blink when I didn't. Heard coins dropping from the roof of the cruiser. Felt someone exhale on the back of my neck while windows were up. Each detail was like another nail in a coffin I hadn't realized I was building for myself. And then there was the call. Not a radio call, an actual phone call. My cell buzzed around 3 a.m. while I was parked at one of the turnoffs, catching up on paperwork. The screen said unknown. I shouldn't have answered. God help me, I shouldn't have. But I did. And on the other end, I heard my own voice. Not live, not present. My voice, recorded, replayed, looping the words, "Don't let them in. Don't let them in. Don't let them in." Over and over, until finally it shifted into something else, something that wasn't me at all. A growl, low and wet, like an animal trying to form human speech. I hung up and threw the phone onto the passenger seat, but the screen stayed lit for the rest of the shift, glowing that one word, unknown. Sleep got harder after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of the road. Not just driving it, becoming it. Asphalt replacing skin, branches twisting through my ribs, headlights glowing from my own eyes as I stood frozen, waiting for the next patrol to come through so I could trap them too. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, gasping, my hands aching, like I'd been clutching a steering wheel for hours. The department started asking if I was all right, if I needed time off, but how could I explain that the job wasn't breaking me? The road was? I couldn't. Because once you admit that Clinton Road is more than just asphalt, once you acknowledge it's alive in some way, it wins. That's what I told myself. But the truth was, I was already playing its game. The last straw before I truly understood came 2 weeks later, when dispatch sent me to check out reports of a stalled vehicle near the old iron bridge. I rolled up slow, lights off, and sure enough, there was a sedan parked at the shoulder, hazard lights blinking. But no one was inside. The doors were wide open, and on the driver's seat sat a single coin, an old silver dollar, tarnished and cold. The kind of coin no one uses anymore. The moment I saw it, I heard water dripping, even though the bridge was bone dry. Then I heard it. That same plunk, the sound of a coin sinking into water. Except this time, it wasn't just one. It was dozens, hundreds, falling all around me, plinking and splashing, though the air was empty. I bolted back to the cruiser, slammed the door, and as soon as I did, the sound stopped. The hazards on the sedan blinked out, leaving me alone in total dark. The car was gone when I drove by in the morning. By then, I knew. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. These incidents were escalating for a reason, building pressure like a storm waiting to break. The older officers hadn't been joking when they muttered about rules. They were dead serious. And if I didn't learn them, if I didn't obey them, I was going to vanish like Collins. I could feel it in my bones, in the way my name sometimes echoed back to me from the radio, in the way the road seemed to bend, hungry, eager. I'd been chosen. Whether I liked it or not, I was part of its ritual now. And the only way to survive was to understand the rules. All of them. Pause, and God help me, I knew I was running out of time. It wasn't until my 4th month on Clinton Road that the rules finally found me. Not through some official briefing or training, but through a folded sheet of yellowing paper tucked inside the visor of my cruiser, the kind of paper that smelled faintly of mildew and smoke. The ink smudged and uneven as though whoever wrote it had been shaking the whole time. And at the top in block letters was one phrase that froze the blood in my veins. Rules for night patrol, Clinton Road. I remember staring at it for a long moment, my hand trembling as I unfolded it completely, and I realized these weren't just warnings muttered over coffee in the diner or jokes passed off as superstition. This was a list, written with a kind of desperate authority, like scripture for survival. There were 12 in total, though the handwriting faltered badly toward the end, like the author didn't live long enough to finish properly. Rule 1 read, never stop on the bridge after midnight, no matter what you see, hear, or think you hear. If someone flags you down there, they are not alive. My gut twisted because I remembered the night I'd heard the coin drop, remembered the whisper of my own name rising from the water, and I knew this wasn't exaggeration. Rule 2. If the radio calls you by your name, do not answer. Turn it off. Do not respond, even if the voice sounds familiar. It is not dispatch. My hands shook reading that because I'd already heard it. Already heard my own name whispered through the static. Already felt that cold thrill of dread when my own voice had echoed back at me. Rule 3. When you see headlights behind you, check the color. If they are red, do not slow down, do not stop, do not look directly into the mirror. Drive until they vanish. If they follow you all the way to the end, pray they do not catch you. I thought of Collins then, of that half-finished sentence in his log about red lights, and I realized this must have been his list, his desperate attempt to codify the horror before it swallowed him. Rule 4. You may see a hitchhiker near mile. Marker 16. Do not stop. Do not roll down your window. Do not acknowledge him, no matter what he looks like. If you see your own face beneath the hood, do not swerve. Just drive. My chest constricted as I read that one, because it meant I hadn't imagined it. That moment when I saw myself in the hitchhiker's hood, my own pale face staring back. Rule 5. Dead man's curve will always try to lure you. If you see taillights ahead of you that never get closer, do not follow. If you hear a voice urging you to come closer, ignore it. If you feel your hands steering without your permission, bite down until you taste blood to break the trance. My stomach turned because that, too, had already happened, and the taste of blood on my tongue came back to me as vividly as if it were still there. Rule 6. Do not leave your vehicle to investigate figures on the roadside. They are not human. They will vanish when approached, but if you follow them into the trees, you will not come back. My skin crawled as I recalled the girl in the white dress, head tilted, waiting just off the shoulder, and how she dissolved into nothing the moment I stepped out. Rule 7. If you find a coin in your car, on the bridge, or on the road, do not touch it with your bare hands. Do not toss it in the water. Wrap it in cloth and leave it at the nearest mile marker sign. If you touch it directly, it already belongs to you. The memory of that silver dollar on the driver's seat of the abandoned sedan burned in my mind, and my palms itched, phantom cold, as though I had brushed it even though I hadn't. Rule 8. If you stop your vehicle for any reason, do not remain idle for more than 2 minutes. The trees will move closer. They will touch the car. If the branches tap your window 3 times, you are already marked. That explained the drumming on the glass, the light, deliberate tapping I tried to dismiss as paranoia. Rule 9. Check your reflection before beginning patrol. If your reflection does not move when you move, or if it smiles without your permission, end your shift immediately. Do not return to the road until the next night. I had already broken this one, already seen my reflection laugh at me in the rearview mirror. Rule 10. You may receive phone calls during your shift. The screen will say unknown. Do not answer. If you hear your own voice on the other end, hang up before the 3rd repetition. If you listen longer, you will not recognize your own thoughts again. My phone buzzed in my pocket as if on cue, and I nearly hurled it into the trees before I calmed myself enough to turn it off. Rule 11. If you dream of the road, do not sleep again until sunrise. Falling asleep a second time will trap you in the dream, and you will wake up on Clinton Road even if you never left your house. The cold sweat of my night terrors returned at those words, and I realized I had already broken that too. Rule 12, scrawled so messily I could barely read it, said, if you ever hear laughter behind you when the road is empty, do not. And then it cut off. The ink dragged across the page like the pen had been snatched away mid-stroke. My mouth went dry as I read them over and over, my heart hammering in my chest, because every single one of those rules connected directly to something I had already experienced, some horror I had brushed off, some detail I had ignored, and suddenly it all clicked. This wasn't superstition, it wasn't paranoia, it wasn't bad luck. This was survival. The road had rules, and the rules had teeth. I sat there with that paper trembling in my hands, and for the first time in my career, I felt truly powerless. My badge, my gun, my training, none of it mattered here. Out here, Clinton Road made the laws, and I was just another name waiting to vanish if I failed to obey. And yet, as I folded the paper and tucked it back into the visor, I felt a sick certainty coil in my gut. I had already broken too many. Slow, tense tone. The road was already watching me. The storm outside had stopped by the time I dragged myself back up the spiral steps of the lighthouse. But silence was worse than the thunder ever was because it meant I could hear every groan of the beams, every scratch of something unseen against the windows, every faint hiss like someone whispering my name through waterlogged lungs. And I told myself it was just the ocean pushing at the walls, yet when I reached the keeper's room and saw the logbook open on the desk with fresh ink still glistening on the page that spelled my name in a hand that wasn't mine, I nearly ran back down the stairs, except the rules said never to abandon the lamp during the hours after the storm, so I forced my shaking hands to keep flipping the pages until I realized it wasn't writing but rules, new rules that hadn't been there before. 11 already, but now 12. 13, 14, each more impossible than the last. One reading: if you ever see the drowned man climb the stairs, do not intervene, just let him take his place. And another: do not acknowledge the face in the mirror if it smiles when you do not. And the last one scribbled so violently the paper nearly tore: when the sea calls you by your true name, answer only once, or you will answer forever. And I felt bile rising in my throat because I had already heard it. Once, whispered last night in the foam on the rocks. And now the logbook was warning me too late. So I slammed it shut and stumbled to the lamp chamber where the beam still cut across the black horizon, steady and strong. But in the reflection of the glass I didn't see just myself. I saw a second figure behind me, dripping wet, barnacles clinging to its cheeks, eyes pale as fog, wearing my uniform and smiling as though he had always been here. So I spun, ready to confront him, but the chamber was empty except for me and my own ragged breath. And when I turned back to the reflection, it was gone, though the glass still trembled as though touched. And I wanted to scream, but the night held its breath waiting. And that was when the pounding started again, not from the door below, but from inside the walls, as if the sea itself had learned to knock, and each beat came faster until the stones rattled and dust rained from the ceiling. And I remembered Rule 6. Never open the cellar during storms. Except the storm had ended, so why was something still hammering to be let out? And I thought of the trapdoor under the spiral steps, the one I had sworn never to touch. And I realized the storm wasn't outside anymore. It had moved inside, into the bones of this lighthouse, into me. And still the pounding came, and still the logbook whispered, and still the mirror waited. And I knew then that chapter 4 of my time here was not about keeping the light burning. It was about keeping myself from answering when the sea said my name again and again and again, because once would be survival, but twice would be forever. The fifth night should have been easier, but it wasn't, because every hour inside the lighthouse seemed to erode the walls of reality just a little more, like water wearing away stone. And by then I had learned that exhaustion wasn't just physical here. It was spiritual, mental, something that crept into your bones until you could barely tell the difference between waking and dreaming. And maybe that was the point, because when I walked into the lantern room that evening, the huge glass lens looming like an alien eye, I swear I caught my reflection in it. Only it wasn't me at all, but some version of myself with hollow sockets, where my eyes should be and a grin too wide to belong to anything human. And the sight made me stumble backward into the iron railing, my heart pounding in my throat. But when I blinked, it was gone, replaced by my own haggard face staring back at me. And I thought about Rule 7 again: never look too long into the glass after sundown, and cursed myself for forgetting even for a moment, because temptation was the real predator here, not the rules themselves. And maybe that was why the keeper, Old Man Harker, had gone mad before me, because I found his journal wedged behind a broken panel near the logbook, pages filled with scrawled warnings that weren't rules at all but confessions, admissions that he had seen her in the waves, a figure dressed in dripping black with hair like seaweed, whispering promises to him from beneath the foam. And I had the sick realization that he had broken Rule 3, never answer the voices outside, and in doing so had invited something into this place that refused to leave, which was why the saltwater stains never dried in the stairwell, why the gulls sometimes flew in perfect circles without flapping their wings, why the tides themselves seemed to beat in time with my heartbeat. But even knowing all this didn't help me when I heard the knock again, faint at first, then louder, echoing through the spiral staircase as though someone was climbing the steps toward me, knocking their knuckles against the stone wall with every step. And I froze, lantern trembling in my grip, because the rules didn't cover this. There was nothing about knocks on the inside, nothing about something moving upward while I was already at the top. And when I finally forced myself to move, legs shaking, I pressed my ear against the iron trapdoor that sealed the lantern room from the stairwell below and held my breath. And what I heard nearly stopped my heart, my own voice, whispering from the other side, begging me to let myself in, promising I was cold and tired and needed rest. And I almost dropped the lantern right there, because the rules hadn't warned me about myself, hadn't told me what to do if the thing trying to get in wore my voice, my tone, even my ragged breathing. So all I could do was back away, muttering the rules under my breath like prayers, until the knocking stopped and the silence pressed so hard against my ears it felt like they would bleed. But silence here is never safe. And sure enough, when I glanced down the glass lens toward the sea, I saw lights in the water, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, bobbing and flickering like lanterns being carried by invisible hands. And they began to move in formation, spiraling outward into a whirlpool of cold green fire. And I felt the pull. In my chest, the same pull that had dragged Harker into madness. The same pull that made the walls of the lighthouse tremble as though the whole building wanted to walk down into the waves. And for one wild moment, I thought maybe that was its true purpose. Maybe the lighthouse wasn't built to warn ships away, but to act as a beacon for something beneath. A summoning signal. And that's when the lens itself flared to life, though I hadn't lit it. Beams of pale green light cutting across the night sky. And in those beams I saw shapes. Not ships, not gulls, but vast, writhing forms that didn't belong to any world I knew, wriggling in and out of the clouds like eels through weeds. And when one turned its head toward the beam, I felt my mind stagger beneath the weight of its gaze. Like my thoughts were being rewritten letter by letter. And though I tried to look away, the lens caught me, trapped me, and in the curved glass I saw again that reflection that wasn't, hollow-eyed and grinning, but now its lips moved, whispering words I couldn't hear but understood all the same. It's already too late, and I think in that moment I finally understood the worst rule of all, the unspoken one, the one the keeper never wrote down because admitting it would make it true, that you could follow every single rule to the letter and still lose, because the rules weren't for keeping you safe, they were only to delay the inevitable, to draw out the slow collapse until the lighthouse had eaten every last shred of who you were. And I laughed then, a broken sound that echoed against the glass, because I realized my only choice was whether I wanted to go screaming or smiling into the dark that waited just outside the beam. The storm had not stopped since that night when the lighthouse itself seemed to turn against me, when its light bent and twisted across the waves in ways that could not be natural, when the rules I had clung to like a lifeline shattered one by one in my hands, leaving me with nothing but the raw and gnawing knowledge that I was never meant to leave this place alive. And as the final night began, as the wind screamed through the cracks of the stone tower and the sea slammed like an angry beast against the cliffs, I realized there was no point in pretending anymore, no point in whispering to myself that maybe, just maybe, I could outlast the curse, for the journal's final pages had begun to write themselves before my eyes, blotting out in ink that bled like veins across the paper, spelling my name again and again until the letters warped into claw marks across the parchment. And when I tried to tear it apart, the pages cut me, each slice a whisper of the previous keepers who had tried the same, who had bled the same, and who had vanished into the very stones I walked upon, the stones that groaned and breathed and seemed to shift ever so slightly when I placed my weight upon them. And the air was thick with salt and decay, not just of fish or seaweed, but of something older, something trapped in the cracks of the lighthouse itself, something that wanted me as much as the sea wanted every drowned soul it had ever swallowed. And when the lantern room above me began to glow, not from the oil lamp, not from the mechanisms I had wound, but from a light that seeped outward like a heartbeat, a pulse that throbbed with each second until it matched my own racing chest, I knew the rules had only been bait, chains to keep me moving in circles, because no matter how closely I followed them, no matter how perfectly I obeyed, they had only ever been the language of the trap itself, instructions for how to stay in the cage until it was ready to shut forever. And as I climbed the spiral steps, each one slick as though something wet had passed before me, I heard the voices of the drowned keepers below rising up, not in words but in the hiss of foam, the crash of waves, the groan of wood torn apart. And they told me not to come up, told me to leave, told me it was too late, but I couldn't stop, not with the light pulling me like gravity. And when I reached the lantern chamber and saw it, the beam no longer sweeping the ocean, but focused straight down into the black water like a spear of heaven-piercing hell, I knew it was showing me where I belonged, where the lighthouse had meant to send me from the very first night. And I tried to turn back, I swear I did, but the floorboards shifted beneath me like a mouth opening. The walls bent inward like ribs cracking, and I fell without end, down past the stones, past the cliff, past the ocean itself, into A darkness so thick it pressed against my chest until I thought my ribs would break. And in that darkness I saw the other keepers, their eyes like hollow lanterns, their mouths moving soundlessly, their bodies adrift like kelp, and one of them reached for me, his hand cold and barnacled. And when I recognized my own face staring back, I understood the final rule. The one never written, but always waiting. There is no keeper of the lighthouse, only the lighthouse keeping us, feeding itself with each of us in turn, a chain unbroken and unbreakable, and now I am part of it. Now my voice joins the chorus in the crashing waves. Now when you stand at the base of the tower on a storm-soaked night, you might hear me whispering to you in the salt wind, warning you, begging you, but it won't matter, because once you've heard me, once you've read the rules, you've already taken the first step, and the lighthouse will wait, patient as stone, patient as tide, until you come to relieve me of my shift, until you climb the spiral stairs, until the light burns your name into the dark. And when that day comes, when you step into the lantern room and the beam finds you, you will know as I do now. There is no escape. There never was, and there never will be.